Well, good morning and welcome to our virtual service. My name is Reverend James Parker. Just such a pleasure to be here with you today, and we've got a lot to cover. My lesson title today is Cultivating Compassion. Friends, as we find ourselves in the throes of Lent, a season of change and transformation, now's the time more than ever to sink ourselves into a spiritual consciousness that gives rise to our greater aspirations and goals. And to achieve these aspirations and goals, we must first challenge ourselves to become our very best selves. And there's no better self-driving force than the gift of compassion toward ourselves and others. This week, we'll embark on a journey of transformation and love using this wonderful power of benevolence and care so that we may become better instruments of peace, love, prosperity, and joy. So what is compassion? According to His Holiness the Dalai Lama, compassion is an aspiration, a state of mind, wanting others to be free from suffering. It's not passive, it's not empathy alone, but rather an empathetic altruism that actively strives to free others from suffering. He goes on to say, genuine compassion must have both wisdom and loving kindness. That is to say, one must understand the nature of the suffering from which we wish to free others. This is wisdom. And one must experience deep intimacy and empathy with other sentient beings. This is loving kindness. Compassion asks us to look into our own hearts, discover what gives us pain, and then refuse under any circumstance whatsoever to inflict that pain on anybody else. In the book of 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 8, it says, finally, all of you, be like-minded, be sympathetic, love one another, be compassionate and humble. Tell me, friends, what could you do today to bring comfort to another and thus make the world a better place? Compassionate acts are generally considered by those that take into account the suffering of others and attempts to alleviate that suffering as if it were one's own, to show special kindness to those who feel pain. In this sense, the golden rule is clearly based on the concept of compassion. Do not treat others as you would not like them to treat you. Or in its optimistic form, always treat others as you would wish to be treated yourself. Friends, compassion differs from other forms of human behavior in that its focus is predominantly on the alleviation of grief, sorrow, anguish, distress, or affliction. Why develop compassion in your life? Well, scientific studies suggest that people who practice it produce 100% more DHEA. And DHEA is a hormone that your body naturally produces in the adrenal gland. The benefits include strengthening the immune system, slowing natural changes in the body that come with age, decreased stress, providing more energy, improving mood and memory, building up bone and muscle strength. But there are other benefits as well, and they are both emotional and spiritual. The main benefit, though, is that it helps you to be happier and makes others around you happier. Mary is having a terrible headache that just won't go away. So she goes to her minister to see if there's anything he can do. She whines and cries and talks for hours, not only about her headache, but about her terrible living conditions as well. All of a sudden, after she finishes talking, Mary shouts overjoyed, "Reverend, I think your holy presence has cured me. The headache is completely gone." To which the minister responds, No, Mary, it's not gone. I have it now." Friends, the basis of compassion is Latin meaning co-suffering. More involved than simple empathy, compassion commonly gives rise to a desire to alleviate another's limited thinking and negative circumstances. It's not pity which separates us from another's suffering. Compassion opens our hearts and connects us to that individual in a certain way. It's not sympathy, which is simply recognition of another's lack. It looks beyond the lack and the personality to the desire of the other person to rise above their lack. The unknown author writes, Sympathy looks in and says, I'm sorry. Compassion goes in and says, I'm with you. Sympathy looks in and says, I would like to help. Compassion goes in and says, I'm here to help. Sympathy says, I wish I could carry your burden. Compassion says, cast your burden on me. Sympathy often irritates with many words. Compassion helps and hears in quietness and understanding. The compassionate person does not cry when others cry, but uses the energy that they would waste in tears to stretch forth their hands in encouragement to the one in need. Beyond the tears, compassion gives comfort. Beyond the seeming pain, compassion sees the yearning for well-being. Beyond the loneliness, compassion establishes the desire for friendship, giving kindness and understanding. Compassion does not judge by appearances. It always looks beyond them to the higher self within and declares the truth of its being. It sees the Christ within every soul and calls for freedom from pain and misery. Jesus said in the book of Luke chapter 6, verse 36, you must be compassionate, just as your Father is compassionate. Jesus demonstrated compassion throughout his ministry, especially to those who were considered castaways or outsiders, the poor, damaged, physically and mentally ill, as well as the heartbroken, lepers, Samaritans, Gentiles, tax collectors, sinners, those struck by disaster, and even women who fell to the bottom of society at that time. He openly rejected the system that dictated who had the rights and who didn't, who was to be acknowledged and who wasn't, and who one could speak to, eat and drink with, touch, help, defend, or befriend. Marcus Borg said, compassion for Jesus was political. He directly and repeatedly challenged the dominant social-political paradigm of his social world and advocated instead for what might be called a politics of compassion. Jesus demonstrated again and again that the letter of human-made law is less important than the Spirit of God's law, which is love and compassion. He said, love one another as I have loved you. This Christ presence within us wants us to care for each other. It wants our deepest level of understanding. Yes, compassion was one of Jesus' remarkable qualities. Today, let's look at 6 practices to incorporate into our daily life that will help us cultivate compassion. First, number 1, greet each morning with a routine. The Dalai Lama suggests that we come up with something that allows us to start the day powerfully. He proposes something like this. Today, I am fortunate to have woken up. I am alive. I have a precious human life. I am not going to waste it. I am going to use all my energies to develop myself, to expand my heart out to others, to achieve enlightenment for the benefit of all beings. I am going to have kind thoughts toward others. I am not going to get angry or think badly about others. I am going to benefit others as much as I can. Number 2, practice empathy. The first step in cultivating compassion is to develop empathy for your fellow human beings. Imagine your own moments of suffering in life, those times when something made you feel terrible and alone. Think of how awful it felt. By imitating that feeling again and again, you can cultivate or feel what someone else may be going through and better understand their feelings. John Steinbeck said, you can only understand people if you feel them in yourself. Number 3, practice commonalities. Instead of recognizing the differences between yourself and others, try to recognize what you have in common instead and ignore the differences. One of my favorite exercises comes from a great article from Old Magazine. It's a 5-step exercise to try when you meet friends and strangers. Step 1, just like me, this person is seeking happiness in his or her life. Step 2, just like me, this person is trying to avoid suffering in his or her life. Step 3, just like me, this person has known sadness, loneliness, and despair. Step 4, just like me. This person is seeking to fill his or her needs. Step 5, just like me. This person is learning about life. These steps are geared toward finding common ground with others. Check it out. Number 4, practice alleviating suffering. Theodore Roosevelt said, "No one cares how much you know until they know how much you care." Once you can empathize with another person and understand their challenges and suffering, the next step is to want that person to be free from the suffering. This is the heart of compassion. Actually, it's the definition of it. Here, you must open your heart and mind and act deeply and lovingly with what you know. Step 5, practice acts of kindness. Practice doing something small each day to help end the suffering of others, even in a tiny way, even if it's a smile or a kind word, or doing an errand or chore, or just talking about a problem with another person. Find a way to make it a daily practice. Zero Dean said, "If you want more kindness in the world, put some there." Number 6, practice having compassion for those who mistreat you. The last stage is to not only want to ease the suffering of those we love and meet, but even those who mistreat us. Instead of acting in anger when someone mistreats you, imagine the experiences of that person. Imagine what that person was taught as a child. Imagine the day or week that person has had, and what kind of bad things happened to that person. Imagine the suffering that person must have been going through to mistreat you that way. And understand that their action was not about you, but about what's going on inside of them. Then see if you can imagine trying to stop the suffering of that person. Once you have mastered this practice, try acting with compassion and understanding the next time a person mistreats you. In The Art of Happiness, it says, "Love and compassion are necessities, not luxuries. Without them, humanity cannot survive." Friends, compassion is the most powerful force in the world. It can defeat indifference, intolerance, and injustice. It can replace judgment with acceptance because it makes no distinction between age, ethnicity, gender, or disability. It freely embraces the rich diversity of humanity by treating everyone as equals. It benefits both those who receive it and those who share it. Ultimately, every person on earth desires it, and every human being deserves it. Mohsin Hamid said, "Compassion is about finding echoes of another person in yourself." Begin now. Enjoy a life based on compassion that will lead you on a fulfilling journey. You will experience a deep sense of joy in your efforts to improve lives. You will quickly understand how rewarding life can be. You will bring hope and opportunity to those facing challenges. And you will learn to feel good about yourself for attempting to be a part of the solution. Why? Because you will have embraced a cause that is bigger than your own small personal issues. If you begin to fill your life with compassion, I promise you, you will develop increasing awareness of humanity, wholeness, wealth, love, peace, and joy. Friends, step up today with compassion. Are you willing to do this with me today? Well, thank you all, and God bless you.